Thank you, everybody. I didn't want to interrupt anything. I want you to continue talking and networking and enjoying your lunch, but I do want to kick off our panel, and to start, I just want to say I am so excited we're doing this and that we packed a room full of women. That's just awesome. And because I mean, in my mind, really only good comes when you get a bunch of women together and you share your experiences and advice, and this is going to be great. So, as Eric mentioned, we've taken on several initiatives around women, diversity, and inclusion at Enterprise Connect this year. Of note tonight, there is a women's reception at the Fort, which is right out there, looks like a fort, at 7 o'clock. And then tomorrow at 1:10 in EC Theater 100, which is on the show floor, there's another Women in Communications panel that you won't want to miss. And then, of course, on Wednesday morning at 8 a.m., we have a diversity and inclusion session. So lots of things going on, but I'm definitely the most excited about this one. I've got some really awesome panelists here today. So before we get started, let me introduce them to you. So on the far end, that's Erin Larry. She is in charge of End User Services Agile Transformation Leader at Boeing. And then in the middle, we have Gari Valero. She's a Senior Manager of Collaboration and Networking Strategy and Engineering at Yum Brands. And then right to my right is Jeannie Spinoza. She's the Manager of Telecommunications at Brown University. And to start, I wanted to ask my panel if they would share a defining moment in their careers as women, and any advice or lessons that they've gleaned from that experience, that moment. So, Jeannie, did you want to start?
Sure. Let's make sure you can hear me. My defining moment really was the beginning of my career in telecommunications, those 40 years ago. The Cliff Note version, I was a grad school dropout. I had no income and no future in sight. I was playing women's softball with a team in Massachusetts, and there on the opposing team pitcher mound was a woman that I went to college with. And she worked for Rome, New England, now Rome, R-O-L-M, a name that has since disappeared, I believe. And she told me she was teaching people how to use their computerized telephones. And I said, well, what the heck does that mean? And she told me, and I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I could do that. 2 years later, and I kept calling her to see if she could help me get a job. She had been promoted. Her job was open. She told me to call her manager, which I did. And she hired me on the spot. She said, you're smart, you'll learn this, you're hired. And I started on Monday of the following week, and on Friday of that same week, I taught my first class to people. And I only knew this much more than they did. And when they asked questions and I didn't know, I said, I have no idea, great question, let me find out. And then I would go find out, and I would tell them, and I learned that much more. So I would say my defining moment was taking a chance on myself. Thank God that they took a chance on me. I didn't know anything. I figured I could learn it. And I wasn't afraid to say, I don't know. So I would say the value of networking, never be afraid to say, I don't know, and take a chance on yourself. And as you are out there in the world, take a chance on someone else as well.
All right, Gari.
So over the period of my career, I think I've had a few defining moments, but the one that resonated with me the most was when I joined KFC. So I work for Yum Brands, which is corporate for KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. So when I joined KFC, throughout my career, I have been in software development. I've been a hardcore software developer. So when I moved there, my team was doing waterfall, and it was very traditional development. And I pitched to the CIO and the leadership team that, guys, we need to make changes. We need to move more towards agile development. And I made this pitch. I was up until 2 o'clock trying to put something together because the pitch was the next day. And there was complete pin drop silence in the room as I was going through it for half an hour, selling it, going through all the different aspects, why they should do it. They should change the way they have been doing things for 17 years. And at the end, I was like, I'm not sure how it went because nobody asked a question. And they were all like, okay, sounds good. How much do you need? And when do you start? I'm like, well, there's nothing else. I don't have to pitch or sell. They're like, no, I think it all makes sense. So for me, that was an aha moment where I was like, wow, I can make a difference. And these guys are going to listen to me, to all the crazy ideas we have, and I can make a huge difference in how things are being done at such a broader level. And I think that's when I had, one of the other things was you do need to have support systems. So all of these leaders, some of them, I did talk to them beforehand too. So this wasn't the first time they had heard this, because a lot of times we just go and pitch something, but you need to do a little bit of groundwork so that it's not completely new for them. So I think that helps. So that was huge for me. What about you, Erin?
Well, I'd like to preface my comments with one observation, and that's in 39 years, I would love that we were not talking about gender. That would make me really happy to avoid that. So we're doing some things right. I, like Jeannie, I'm an accidental technologist. I ended up working for a phone company right out of college, started as a manager, and transferred into the network testing organization where we were supporting all of the circuits that were powering the beginning of the internet in Seattle. So I had a boss that had a team of managers. I had a group of women primarily, and we were called the screeners. And when a trouble ticket came in, they would screen it to make sure we had all the information so it could go to the testers. And a management position came open over the testing organization, which were primarily men, primarily out of the military, because that's where they were learning how to do this kind of testing. There were no college programs teaching it. And that position was open, and I said to my boss, Carl Murphy, I still remember him fondly, I said, Carl, would you consider me for that position? And he said, well, we've never had a woman do that before. And I said, okay, is that a limiting factor? And he's like, no, we just never have. Okay, cool, let's do it. And I got the job, and I started doing something that I didn't realize was blazing a trail. I just thought, it's a job I'm interested in. It's what comes next after the screening process. I'd like to understand the full development cycle. And it was fascinating to learn. And I was 23 years old, managing a group of men who had had lots of years of experience and a lot of background in things I didn't appreciate or understand, and they thought of me as just a dumb college kid. And all I could say was, yeah, so what? That's what I am. But I'll learn. And it was fun. It was a great way to get started.
Yep, that's great. You know, one of the things that I got to know these ladies a little bit over the last couple of days. Gary, I think you have 20 years experience in industry, Erin over 30, and Jeannie over 40.
Forever. Yeah.
So my question is really, what kind of changes have you seen in workplace culture over the last decade or two, and in regard to gender? And if there have been opportunities that have improved for women, then what work still needs to be done to close the gap?
Okay, I have thoughts.
We knew Erin would take that.
Refer to point number one. Yeah. I wish that we were not having these conversations and we didn't need these kind of luncheons, but I have seen almost some progress and then some reversion. And I did some research prior to this, mostly because I put together an article for No Jitter on it, and it really was about how are we doing? And I always count when I go to a meeting at Boeing or wherever I happen to be, and I say, what are the percentages? And at best, we're at 30, but typically it's in the 20, 22 range. And I think that's a shame. We need to do better. Culture is a part of that. Culture plays a big role, and when The Society of Women Engineers did a research study recently about how do we encourage women to, number one, stay in the profession, and number two, return to it if they take a career break. One of the things that came out of that research was the cultural bias is driving women away. It's both driving women away and keeping them from wanting to stay, or come back. And from my perspective, until we address that head on and say, okay, this is an issue and we want to make it better, let's involve people, I think it's going to persist. And I don't have a solution for it, but I think the main piece of it is having the conversation up front so that it's a known thing and you don't end up with situations where it becomes a hostile work environment. And I've been fortunate in my career, really don't really have one. And I didn't fix the environment, I just found a different job.
Yep.
You know, it's what you got to do.
Yeah, I think what I've seen in past few years, so I come from a very different background than both of you since I started in software development. And things are a little bit different over there because you interact with more women. It's a different kind of work that you do. I can't say it's not hardcore technical, it is still technical, but it's in a different sense. But what I've seen is over the period of time, we have seen uptick and then things going down. And what resonated with me, and I'm going to give you guys a recent example. So I have a senior in high school, and I know a lot of his friends, and some of them are girls. And none of them wanted to go down the STEM path. And everybody wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer. I'm like, hey, girls, I know there were a couple of ones who did really well in science fairs, and they coded, they came up with these games and stuff. I'm like, why aren't you going into computer science? They're like, none of my friends are.
Right.
So I think we need to stop that. And that's when I had this conversation with her. I'm like, you don't have to do what other girls are doing. Figure out what you like and follow your passion. And so she got acceptance into Berkeley in computer science, and the other one was Georgetown. And she was this close to joining Georgetown. And then I just had a conversation. I'm like, this is your defining moment. I know you love STEM. I know you love computer science. Why not? And then the next day, I get a call that, yeah, she has accepted. I'm like, okay, I made a difference. I was really thrilled that I at least made a difference a little bit. Not for the 6 girls, but at least one person.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things. We need to keep talking to them and talking to young girls, especially young women, saying, hey, you know what? There's a different path that you can choose.
Yeah.
So even if I can make a difference in one person's life and steer them in the right direction, I'm happy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings me kind of to the topic of mentorship. I really wanted to kind of get your thoughts on mentorship. Do any of you mentor other women or men? Aaron?
Oh yeah. It's the most fun part of my day. I love being able to talk to people about what makes them excited about work, how they see their future going, and how to empower them to take the right steps. And the idea is, especially when I'm mentoring young women, is to ask if they've encountered any roadblocks, and if so, how did they address them? And I've found that one of the young women that I mentor is, she's Muslim, and she said, sometimes people are put off by the way I look. And I said, that's something to address head on. This is how I dress, this is what I do. And she's very confident, very capable, and she said, I need to speak up more. My cultural training is to be a listener, and I need to get out of that shell. I need to do something different. And we've practiced and provided opportunities for her to see how this could be done differently. And it's easier for me at this stage of my career to speak my mind and stomp a foot once in a while or act like a guy. Oh my God. I mean, sometimes I just have to say, channel your inner man, just do it. And I'm trying to convey that as an alternate path than trying to be a woman speaking up in a man's world. Use them, emulate them. It works. You know, when you hear something that you don't agree with, say, I don't agree with that. It doesn't have to be personal. It is simply business. Take that personal piece out of it.
I was going to say, I humbly disagree. I've learned how to say that more than I ever have. And I'm very happy that I feel safe feeling
That's
that.
good.
Because that's not always the case. But I think just having the confidence in yourself to say, well, that is the stupidest thing. Well, you don't say it that way, although sometimes I do. I humbly disagree. That is absolutely the wrong tactic to take. I don't mentor specific people, but I have mentored several young people in my lifetime, and that has been, for me, the best thing I've ever done. I don't have my own kids, so for me, helping somebody else's kids just makes me feel fabulous. And that's how I feel like I make a difference.
So just for clarity, you weren't disagreeing with me.
I'm
You're
humbly
saying
disagreeing.
that you humbly disagree, yes. And that takes the personal out of it.
So I have a little bit of different take on this. There's mentorship and there's sponsorship. So I think over the period of my career, I've had a lot of good mentors that tell me what needs to be done or who are like my sounding boards. But sponsorship is when they take you with them, right?
Oh.
When they say, okay, this is a person that will be great for this job, and I'm ready to vouch that that person will be great. And I think sometimes they are your bosses or bosses' peers, whoever that is, right? But you got to have those sponsors, ladies. And a lot of times your managers are your best sponsors, or a lot of time your peers. But having that is really important, because every time I've gotten a promotion, because it was somebody sponsored me and said, I believe in you. Even this job. So as I mentioned earlier, that I have spent all of my life in software development. So 2 years back, when they asked me to lead infrastructure, I'm like, are you kidding me? I have never done this before. And I'm like, I am not technical enough. And they're like, yes, you are. And like, what you bring to the table is very different. And what I realized at that point was another defining moment for me was, you know what? You don't need to know it all. You can learn. You need to learn to ask right questions and dig deeper. I think that's the most important thing. And the other thing is make sure that you hire right people. I think that's the single most important thing, so that you can trust them to make the right decisions. Yeah. Because you won't have all the answers, right? So those two things are the key: hiring right people and asking right questions. So sponsorship is the key for me more than mentorship, because that's what really takes you to the next level. And don't be afraid to ask for sponsors, like, hey, I've seen this job. What do you think? Do you think I'll do well? And most of the time you'll hear, oh, you'll do great at it. You should go ahead. So that's what I think.
In preparing for this panel, we kind of had a little bit of a heated debate about one question that I wanted to ask, because I love asking women, how do you balance your personal lives with your professional lives? But it got a little heated, and I'm gonna turn it over to Erin to explain.
I would love to not have to be asked that question once again, because
I know.
However, so I believe in keeping an open mind and learning and growing, so my comments were, listen, guys don't get that question very often. I was waiting in line for the restroom on my flight yesterday, standing patiently, and these two young men were behind me, and I thought, probably coming to some conference as well. Turns out they're both from Microsoft, probably late 20s, early 30s. And they had not met, so they were sharing stories about where they were going. One said, yeah, I didn't go to that conference. It was in London, and I have a 7-month-old, and I'm on a 2-state boundary. And the other guy said, oh, I've got a 3-month-old. I'm in the same boat. And what that told me was, even though they're in a job that's in technology, I didn't overhear what their wives were doing, but all I could think was, it makes me feel better that they're having this conversation and admitting having children creates a difference in your professional life. And that is not an assumption that somebody else is just going to do it. So I will accept that I've learned, and I will say maybe it's a shared responsibility in this newer generation that's coming on board that says, we're both in this boat and we're both going to take care of the kids, and that's awesome. So yeah, that was my experience with that. But it would be great if we'd never had to ask that question either.
And I I like your point about that generation. So it's a younger generation, and that may very well be why that conversation was happening.
Right.
Because in your older couples, I always say every wife needs a wife, because I'm the wife, I have a husband who works, and like we do balance taking chores, but I always feel like, well, where's my wife? Anyway, I don't know if that's a sexist statement, but I truly think that we all need assistance.
I agree. I think having a support system and having your coping mechanisms are really important. And I completely agree with you. You got to have a partner who supports you. Right now, my husband is taking care of the 2 kids, fixing their lunches, dropping them off to school, picking them up, and making sure they're doing their homework. I have a son who is a senior in high school and a younger one who is a freshman. So they are really active, both boys, so they have their sports, they have all of these things going on, and he's managing all of that. Having said that, there are times when you can't do it all, and we have to accept it. And you have to prioritize, right? There are times when I've been traveling and I've missed my older ones' junior prom or their soccer games. And this is the first time I'm missing my husband's birthday, which is tomorrow.
Oh.
And which is totally fine. I've made sure he had a birthday cake, which was supposed to be a surprise, but the younger one gave it away. So, I mean, you have to do what you think is right for that moment and never look back. You need to make sure that you take whatever decision that is, right or wrong, but that's your decision, right? And there have been times when I have missed meetings or called in to an important meeting because my child is sick. And I chose to do that. And so has my husband, right? Next 2 weeks, even though he has a lot of things going on at work, he's making sure that kids are taken care of because he knows that this is important to me. And I think one person that really resonated, last couple of months I've been listening to this podcast by Indra Nooyi, the CEO, ex-CEO from PepsiCo, and some of the things that she has been saying around coping mechanisms, that truly resonated with me. So a lot of times I just go back to these podcasts and hear what are other people doing. And whatever works for, I feel there's no right or wrong answer to this, whatever works for you the best and your family, because you know what is right for you.
I did want to just mention, I can ask these ladies questions all day. I have tons of them. But I would love to give you an opportunity to also ask questions. We have a mic stand in the middle of the room, and it had a mic in it, but we're missing it. Well, maybe we could bring it back over. So if you have a question, she's bringing a mic over, I think. I'll ask another question, and then we'll get, I think you took it.
I can probably ask you that.
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
So, as probably many of you, as a part of I'm starting a Women of Our Company group. And I wanted to ask your recommendation of what to do and what not to do as you start and lead that group within your organization.
Did you hear that?
I don't think there are any rules.
Yeah.
I just think the fact that you're going to do that is a wonderful start, and I think it'll just evolve as it needs to. You'll figure it out. I just think that you have to have faith in the process and women, because that's what we do. We collaborate. We help each other out. And we did have a conversation about competition, so we should talk about that as well. So I'm sure Miss Erin has lots to say, because she has proven that she has lots to say.
On competition, again, I'm going to default to it exists. It's a fact. And we shouldn't either shy away from it or overreact to it. It's just part of getting through a corporate experience. And I think we all have had to address it. In terms of women's groups, I would say Boeing has some fantastic prototypes out there, And if I can help in any way, I'd be happy to share how they've done it. Some of them are around engineering-specific tracks. Some are within the technology zone where I'm at. But it's about using the power of any sort of social networking platform you have to bring people together across the enterprise and get conversations started. And I think those, having them with some regularity and predictability really help people pattern them into their day. So it doesn't have to be a big deal, but it's just nice to have connection points. So I'd love to help you wherever I can.
And I think as I mentioned earlier, one of the key things is to make sure you have a sponsor who will fund you, who will stick by you and help you with the cause. So make sure that you have a sponsor at the leadership level who will do all of that for you.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Yeah. There's a mic stand right there if you need to project.
Thank you. First, I'll say, before I ask my question, I'm very proud to have a husband who stayed home for 12 years to build my family and support me in my career. And I feel very lucky as an IT professional to have that. And I'm applauding him. In terms of questions, in my experience, I would love to understand coping mechanisms that you've had for attending male-dominated conferences. And I've always had this challenge when I go to a party and there's a woman in a cage in a leather-clad outfit, or if there's just a lot of guys at the party and it's just not my kind of place. So I'm curious, how do you cope with those kinds of situations?
You're bringing a flashback to me. I went to that same party. I think it was in Vegas somewhere. And honestly, I think I laugh at it. I try to use humor to diffuse a situation that may make me feel uncomfortable and not become adversarial about it. I think that is something women tend to do. And I think we are within our right to do what makes us feel okay. There's no right solution to that situation. You can stomp out, you can say, oh, this is not for me, or I have a call, I gotta go. There's a lot of things you can do, but mostly I just was like, well, I guess they didn't know I was gonna be here. What's up with this? You just call attention to it and use humor. It gets you out of a lot of sticky situations, but yeah, I had not thought of that in years. Thank you so much.
That's funny, when I saw so many women, I'm like, wow, so many women in communications, and you see, that's great to see, because I had dinner with one of my friends yesterday, and when I asked her question, I'm like, hey, how many women do you have in infrastructure? The answer was 0. But so this was really, I was really happy to see that we had so many women. So there you go, guys.
Absolutely.
We are making a difference.
Absolutely delighted. I have to say, I always felt like it was an any conference or any work situation, especially at the beginning. It was Jeannie and the guys, because it really was me with the guys. And because I'm a observer of people and a lover of people, I always try to connect with anybody in any way, shape, or form. So for me, connecting, whether it's talking about baseball or kids or hobbies, to me that was the way in to just being part of the gang. And so then it wasn't just me as one woman with guys. So I don't know, that just could be me.
So Jeannie, that reminded me of a story that was a few years back. I was still new to going in front of leadership and pitching, and I used to work for this organization where there were very few women as such. And I was pitching to a group of like 20 men, all of them in leadership position, and I don't think you have seen me, but I'm petite. So people couldn't even see me because they were all tall, like 6 foot tall men, and they were all sitting at the table. And guess where I was sitting? On the sidelines, because I didn't think I could sit at that big table. Oh. So that was a defining moment when my coach at that time, he looked at me, and Sean Eads, he was a wonderful guy, and he helped me a lot. He was like, why aren't you sitting over there? I'm like, yeah, next time I should. So And then I was like, you know what? If they can't see me, I'm going to stand up.
There you go.
So I did. I stood up and I went in front of the room and talked. So those are some of the things that you can do. Again, talking about coping mechanisms, right? You need to be a little bit innovative. I mean, even now, there are a lot of times that I'm just one single woman in a sea of 15, 20 men or 30 men, and you have to make your voice heard. And I guess we are all used to it now. But you need to make sure that your voice is heard. And what you bring to the table is really important, because as I moved into this infrastructure role, there are a lot of things that I saw that could make a difference because I brought a completely different perspective. They were used to doing things a certain way, and as I started asking questions, they're like, oh, we have never done it. We have never thought it this way. So I think what you bring to the table, having that confidence is the key.
I actually want to keep that thread going a little bit and, kind of discuss what are some things that women could be doing to better advance their careers. And I was talking with you yesterday about one of my personal missions to stop apologizing for things that I shouldn't apologize for, and Erin, you certainly related to that. And the other one was to stop asking for permission and to just, this is what I'm going to do, not can I please do this. So I'd like to hear some more from you. What are some other ways that women can advance their careers, take charge, and go for it?
I think
you covered it.
yeah.
I covered
And
it up.
also
Just
that
that.
asking for what you deserve, just speaking up and taking the seat at the table. I have had to mentally coach myself that same way, especially if I'm in a role where I'm like covering for my boss and I go into a meeting and I think, okay, I'm not really entitled to be here. But then I realize I am, and I need to sit at the table, I need to represent this role, and I can do this, even though it feels a bit intimidating, because I might be the only woman in the room, or the only one at the main table. And I think there are times when I have to actively remind myself that it's okay, and I should be there. And I don't know that that thought goes through everybody's mind. I'm not going to go to gender, but I think it's something I work toward. And I do apologize for things that are beyond my control. I think it's because I think I run the world, and so I am apologizing for the things that don't work well. I'm kidding over that behavior mostly, but the whole apologizing, oh, I'm sorry, it's raining. Like I have control over that. And I have heard recently that I need to stop doing that. So I'm going to try to do better, but it's a fundamental flaw. I'm just going to go with that.
It's a hard one to get for me to improve on, but any other questions from our audience? Yes.
My question is more for Erin. So working in energy services, I actually manage work myself. How do you attract women? Typically, help desk, service desk is the entry level into IT.
Sure.
So how do you attract more women, obviously, who are qualified, who want to come in and come in, because they are traditionally looked at as this male-dominated, which they are. But like for example, I have at a staff of 14, 2 of them are actually in their telecom,
Right.
and then the rest of them are technicians now. But I've had applicants come in, but very few women.
Yeah, that is tricky, and that is going to speak more to the entry-level pipeline, and that's where we need to start. So I know Boeing is investing millions of dollars in going out into the grade school, middle school level with STEM curriculum for girls. And it's designed to help them feel like this is a path that fits them and encourages them to try new things. So I look at it as you're dealing with the effects of having a pipeline that hasn't had that happen yet, and we need to do more. There's an organization I'm going to plug real quick called Tech Bridge Girls. It's Northwest right now, West Coast. And they are doing a similar thing where they're taking STEM curriculum materials out to underserved schools for girls particularly to learn about what's possible. And I think it's awesome, and I've given them money because that's where we're going to make the difference. I think this young lady's been waiting a while.
Oh, sorry.
Tom back up. Hey, all right. So my name is Kayla. I work with PGI. This is my second time coming to this conference. I'm so excited to be here at this lunch today. And the question that I had for you is kind of around stereotypes, not just stereotypes that we deal with as women working in a male-dominated industry, but the stereotypes that we have against other women. So when I started in my career, my boss and mentor at the time made a statement to me that I've held with me ever since then. And she said, Kayla, I will never work for another woman. And the reason I won't work for a woman is because women are catty. And it's hard to be promoted when you're working underneath another woman. And so I'm not saying I agree with that or anything, but it's a statement that I've held with me in the last 10 years of my professional career. And it's something I've certainly heard other women make reference to. So in your professional opinion, or in your personal opinion, how do we combat or how do we mitigate some of the stereotypes that we as women put against each other in the workforce?
Great question.
That's a great question.
Well, okay, so there's a meme out there that's like, women in the bathroom will help you with anything, right? You run something, you break something, they're gonna be there for you. We need to be the women in the restroom, not the ones out on the dance floor. And I know that's a horrible analogy, but it's the first thing that comes to mind. And I really feel strongly that we can raise each other up. And supporting women is a huge part of what I want to be able to leave as a legacy, and to look back and say, in that zone, I did more good than harm. Mm-hmm. And I think if we all take that attitude forward, we can get rid of some of that, I'm not even going to use the word, the C word.
I think I completely agree with you. I've been fortunate enough to have bosses, even female bosses. Actually, I've had just one. Mm-hmm. When you asked that question, it made me think that how many female bosses I've had, just one. And she was phenomenal, and she and I are still good friends even after I left the organization. But I think a lot of times I think women are harder on women, and that shouldn't be the case. I think we should promote, and I have a female manager right now on my team, and a lot of times I do, and you have to fight for them. Mm-hmm. And I have to stand up and say, no, what you're saying about this person is not right at all. Because you know what, that is leadership. When you look at men, and if they had shown the same behavior, that would have been leadership. So you need to stand up and say, absolutely, no, this is not the case. So we have to be there for each other. Mm-hmm. And unless we speak up, that's not going to happen.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Marlene, and I was in telecom in the corporate world. Last job I had, I was running a team of 100 globally, a product manager for Quest, now CenturyLink. But now I started my own company, and it's been about 5 years now. And I wanted to ask you, since you're inside, as I call it, and I'm outside, I still like to keep that connection because I now go to companies, and I'm a business consultant for them in technology. And I also do mentor girls in a group called IT Women, where we go out to high school and college to encourage them into STEM. But how do I keep the connection with my sisters inside corporate America to help me in my growth in my business? And how do you see that your place in helping women who are outside keeping that connection in
By
technology?
coming here.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
And you know
Absolutely.
what?
LinkedIn also,
Yeah, LinkedIn is huge.
But I think
Professional
this venue is how we meet each other.
Yeah.
And that's how you stay connected and become connected to other people you don't even know yet.
Yeah.
So keep participating and keep being you, because that's what's going to make it work.
I think when you're going to other organizations, right, make sure you do your research. I've realized that I do much better when I have done research and know who the key players are, and if there are women in the organization, that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Before we get to your question, I just want to mention that conference sessions do start up again at 1 o'clock, so we'll go a few more minutes longer because I love this. But the wine glasses on the table are for you to take. Pop sockets are for you to take as well. And go ahead with your question.
Hi. So my name is Ellen Cohen from Speechmatics. Whenever we talk about women in business, we seem to focus on...
We can hear you.
I'm like my 6th grade teacher
right.
now. Oh, wait. We seem to focus on young women and STEM. There's a group of women out there, the women over 50. So the New York Times article recently talked about unemployment and ageism. I'm from the Silicon Valley where ageism is alive and well. And it's much, much worse for women over 50. I would even say over 40, where we're treated like dinosaurs. And the assumption automatically is we know nothing about technology. Like when you talk to people, they'll dumb it down so much that it's like entirely offensive. So my question or my invitation to this room is women over 50 are just as competent and they have a lot of things to bring, a lot of knowledge that we are the ones that can help them get in the workforce and stay in the workforce just like men until they're in their 60s and over.
Yep, absolutely.
We agree.
All right, so you are welcome to stay and network. There's no need to rush out of here, but I do want to wrap up the session. Please join me in thanking these awesome ladies for the panel. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us. It's invaluable. So, and have a good rest of your conference day. We'll hopefully see you tonight at the networking reception.